you all to the HR Connect 2.0. Every profession matters. I will be the host for the evening. A postgraduate in economics, she has been in the field for almost 3 decades now. She is credited with breaking some of the most high profile stories in the country. Started with print media and moved on to broadcast journalism, she is the face of the Times Now TV channel. She is the group editor politics at Times Network and hosts a primetime show, The News Hour, on Times Now. Let me introduce to you all an Indian journalist, news anchor, and media personality, Navika Kumar. The Human Resource Development Cell SRCC takes immense pleasure in hosting her. But before we move on, I would request everyone to please turn on their videos and to switch off their mics to avoid any disturbance and to maintain decorum. Please, please feel free to ask any questions using the chat box, which will take up after some time. The topic for this session is the rising influence of social media. Now, I would request ma'am to enlighten us. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you very much for having me for such a important issue as a discussion on the rising importance of social media. I know in your generation, everybody depends on social media for their news, for their updates, for expressing their opinion, uh, for knowing what's going on, not just in India, but across the world. You follow newspaper Twitter handles, you follow television channel Twitter handles. Just about every information that you need just happens to be on social media today. I want to tell you, just in India, in 2020, we've had 320 million Facebook users, about 500 million WhatsApp users, and 17.5 million Twitter users, and about 120 million, that's 12 crore people on just Instagram. Now, that's the kind of presence that you have, the usage that you have of social media. And whichever brand you're talking about, every brand finds it absolutely important to be present on social media for an interaction firsthand with people. Those people could be their consumers, those people could be their target audience, those people could be people who are just watching others, or waiting to know from others, personalities, opinions. A lot of all of this get settled these days on social media itself. Uh, Many of you would have seen news breaks first on social media. So whether it's the Times Now handle, or you pick up any other television channel, or Times of India, they'll all give you the news. The issue for us, the challenge for us today, is to ask two or three basic questions. And these basic questions concern whether what we are reading on social media, whether it is authentic information or not. Many of you must have experienced WhatsApp forwards. Many of these WhatsApp forwards will give you a detail of a lot of things that seem to be first-hand information. But do you really know whether this is true or not, or whether it is fake news, whether it is somebody who's just made it and circulated it? So challenge number one is to separate the fake from the real. Challenge number two is the platform that you are on, whether it's Twitter, whether it's Facebook, is that platform itself unbiased? Is it blocking some kind of expressions and pushing some other kind of expressions? Especially if you go on to, let's say, Twitter, you'll see the trending lists. Now, are these trends that just happen organically, or are these trends that actually are being pushed by an army of people, by the platform itself? We don't know. When we look at it, we don't know what is really behind this. Some people have complained that they've been taken off the platform, while others are being promoted. Some people say they have X number of followers, and a few days later, the number of followers just drop. Why does this happen? So that leads to some of us asking this question: is the social media platform that you are on, is it completely unbiased? So we've looked at two very important issues: whether the platform itself is unbiased and whether what you are reading on these platforms is fake or is it real news. The third biggest challenge is now with the social media guidelines that have come up from the government. Is this making us a society which is a society of freedom of speech, freedom of expression, or not? These, according to me, are the important questions, because social media has percolated virtually in every walk of life, whether you're students, whether you're professionals, whether you are from the media, whether you're from the government. Everybody is using social media, and the leading personality who's made social media so very popular in India is the Prime Minister himself. I don't know how many of you have seen the elections of 2014, where social media became a extremely important platform where the popularity of Mr. Narendra Modi grew. Today, if you look at the opposition, there are some issues that are magnified on social media, but there are also at the same time some expressions that are expressed about top opposition leaders. Are these real issues? Is this really what people feel? Let's just pick up the example of Mr. Rahul Gandhi. Do people really feel that Rahul Gandhi is raising the right issues, or do people feel that Rahul Gandhi is actually does not have enough knowledge, expertise on the subjects that he speaks about? So a lot of information that is there on social media, we as people who are either consumers or users of social media to attract our audiences, we all have to be extremely uh, we have to be extremely discerning about what we are looking at, what we are dealing with, and how we need to react. Does social media really take away or breach your privacy? We've seen the Cambridge Analytica experience where they read your posts and try and find out which side of the political spectrum you normally are on, because most of your Facebook posts or your Twitter posts will give people over a period of time an analysis of what you really think, what your ideology is. So these are some of the issues that have taken center space, and it's very, very important for all of us to be extremely discerning about this new medium that we are dealing with, and how do we express ourselves, whether it pushes into our private lives, whether any third agency, without asking us, has the right to decide or decipher our ideologies, our preferences. These are questions that are very important for all of us in today's world to realize, because while we are on social media out of our own free will, are we just becoming guinea pigs for somebody else's experiment, is something that we need to know. Which is why rising influence of social media, while important as a tool for our usage, is also important for us to be extremely aware uh, of the tool that we are using. Is it becoming a tool that is using us? And that really is the debate today. And that debate, that awareness is important for all of us to know. All of you who are in colleges, of course, all of us here. I mean, when I as a journalist express my opinion on social media, am I being seen as an experiment object for somebody to base a study on, without my so-called consent that I've given? So these are issues that are becoming extremely important. And the biggest issue, of course, to us in the field of news, in the field of journalism, is to sift the fake from the real stories. And that is very important because we've seen in certain instances that have happened in the recent past. I'm sure most of you have seen the issue of Greta Thunberg tweeting out a toolkit. The toolkit talks about some people trying to propound a kind of theory that there is a genocide of farmers that is going on in India. Now, the reason these things are important to know, the reason these things are important to decipher and to separate the real from the fake is because, if I start saying, and I, with my profile as a journalist and a senior journalist at that, if I start saying that, okay, there's just been police action at India Gate in Delhi, and 100 people have been killed. Now, people will take that as credible information. And this could spread a complete chain reaction across the city. And it can lead to something that we never expected, because it was just uh, a trial balloon or a miscommunication or an April Fool thing. So the issue really becomes that, should anybody be allowed to propound misinformation in the name of having a tool like social media? These issues become extremely important in governance, in our responsibility as citizens, as well as our rights as citizens, which is why, while there is an increasing role of social media, there are several issues that we must be absolutely aware of, and we must, uh, sort of know how to differentiate, and what is the impact. Are we getting used, or are we using a tool or a platform? These are important issues that all of us in the present day world need to deal with, need to know, need to understand, and then need to take a position on what's right and what's not. I think I'll stop speaking here, and I'll be more happy if we have a conversation which is a two-way conversation, where you can ask me questions, and hopefully I'll be able to respond. Is that good?
Yes, ma'am. So now the floor is open for any questions that you all have. Kindly put up the same in the chat box and send it to me privately. That is Akshat Agrawal, and I would be reading them out to ma'am. So, ma'am, first of all, there's one question that there is so much negativity on the internet. So, how can we overcome it?
Sorry, I didn't get that. There is so much.
Ma'am, there is so much negativity on the internet. Negativity.
Okay, negativity. Yes, ask me.
Yes.
So much negative, because everybody who thinks there is a freedom to express themselves thinks it's their birthright to criticize and to comment on other people. And of course, for them, other people have never done anything right, and their view is the best view. One way to deal with this is to be absolutely philosophical about it, because the negativity does exist. You can put it down to competition, you can put it down to just venting. Trolls are there all over the place, and that I think complimenting each other, or sort of giving a thumbs up to each other is rarer than people abusing each other. One way of it is not to pay too much attention, especially to some of those trolls who don't even identify themselves, have kind of fake handles, and try and abuse other people, to which the government in its recent guidelines has said that, okay, please be on the platform, but it is up to the social media platforms themselves to check out the individuals who are there. Are they under their own names, and whether they're really recognized people, and are they sort of approved, checked out, things like that. So one way to do is to ignore the trolls, unless they are people who are giving you the some sort of valuable criticism which is constructive in a nature, which could help you uh, synthesize your views better or your position better. um, you can differentiate between that. In other ways, many people these days have even paid armies to sort of counter this. So if you think that somebody is really popular and done something really good because there are so many positive comments coming up on social media, well, that's also not very true. So my sense is, I'm a little cynical. I don't really look at the fake handles. I don't pay any attention to them. I don't pay attention to the trolls. But I do look for constructive criticism. And in every 50 or 100 comments, one that says something constructive you can store in a microchip in your brain, and sort of use it next time you're doing something on social media or wherever, whatever field of work, because these constructive suggestions can actually help us.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, I completely agree with what you said. Then, ma'am, there is one question from Sheen. How do you think social media influences young people who are at such an impressionable age?
Yes, it does sometimes have a bad impression on them, because all that is said there, A, may not be correct, B, you may tend to be believing it. uh, at our age and at our stage and in the profession we are, maybe we are cynical and we discount a lot of what we say, but some impressionable minds may believe what they see. So it's very, very important for you to, as I said, differentiate between the fake from the real. um, uh, you know Information that you are reading, everything that you read on Google may not be correct. For example, how to treat a particular ailment, there are so many things that are written on Google through so many authors, so many information bases available, but you still won't begin to treat or operate somebody unless you take the advice of a doctor. So similarly, what you read on the social media may not always be right. There has to be a second line of confirmation that you should do, especially if it's something that seems a little off. There are sites, there are handles which will be credible handles. More often than not, they will give you correct information. Try and build a base of that, especially if you're looking for news. Which are the brands which normally give you the correct kind of news. Pick up those. If you're looking for opinions, then look at those people who look at an opinion or make an opinion based on facts that are given, rather than just having an ideological position, and therefore facts go for a toss. So we have to make these choices. We have to make a bank of all that we read can't be true and can't be believed by us, and we can't fall for it hook, line, and sinker. But at the same time, in different areas, we pick up different credible sources, which will come through experience, or come through word of mouth, and then pick up some of those handles and not necessarily believe everything that any arbit person without any experience puts out there.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, then there is one question from Gitansh. What's your advice to a college student regarding social media usage?
My advice is, it's a important tool. Use it as a tool, but don't become a tool for those who are using you as a guinea pig in their own experiments. For example, as I said, in the Cambridge Analytica, what we went through was people were being targeted depending on the kind of posts they put, and being seen as supporting one party or the other, and becoming the audience for those political parties, because my views are whatever they are. When I go to the booth to cast my vote, I don't want somebody to push me in a direction. It should be out of my own free will, and I'm nobody's guinea pig. That's what I would think. So my sense would be that use social media, be informed, and be very discerning about people who are credible sources of information and opinion. Use it, for example, when you're in trouble, or when you need somebody to address. For example, you're using a product of a company, not getting good service, nobody's paying attention to you from customer service. Use social media, empower yourself through this. But in empowerment, you have to be very, very circumspect as to the information that you're picking up, whether it is from credible sources or not, because empowerment will come when you make the right choice. If you make the wrong choice, you could end up in trouble. So just don't go with the flow. You must be discerning. Your mind must be asking these questions. Oh, somebody's saying this. Is it true? Do I need to check it out from another source? Always be open to a second layer of checking before you believe something on social media, unless it's a verified official handle of somebody.
Yes, ma'am. And then there is another question. How difficult is it to cover big story that may involve people with a lot of political clout?
Break down that question to me.
How difficult is it
to break a story,
to cover big story that may involve people with a lot of political clout?
We do this every day. We do this every day, and political clout has no measurement instrument. Everybody exercises political clout because, if you're a big politician from a big party, ruling party, you have clout. If you're not the ruling party, you are in some other state, you are the ruling party, you still have clout. I think the best way to do a story and to go ahead and cover big stories is to be absolutely 200% sure of your facts. If your facts are clear, the clout does not matter, because in our democracy, there are enough institutions that will protect you. Number one, in the media itself, you can't take action against a reporter or a channel or a media house based on your likes or dislikes. So there will be mechanisms that will set in. There are the courts, of course, that exist. There is the press council. We have a lot of we have the Editors Guild, we have the Journalists Guild. So we have forums which will pick up your cause. But nobody can protect you if your facts are wrong, which is why it is so very important to have absolutely rock solid, confirmed, verified facts when you do a story. If your story is based on facts, if your news is based on facts, nobody can touch you.
Yes. Then there is another question from Stuti. What's your take on shutting down of internet services in times of emergencies?
Well, there are two views on this. What is an emergency? What is being described as an emergency is an important point in this entire argument. And many people feel that the government may think a certain thing as an emergency, whereas the people may not think. I think these decisions are best left to governments and security agencies to take. For example, there was a hue and cry over the shutting off of internet in Jammu and Kashmir right after abrogation of Article 370. Now, whether it should have continued for 2 years, whether it should have ended earlier, we all have our views on it, and we always feel that taking away the freedom of medium for the citizen is not the best thing to do, and it should only be done in extreme conditions. But the argument that was given by the government at that stage was that it was an extreme condition. Kashmir has been a state in turmoil for decades and decades and decades, almost for 70 years. This state has seen a lot of turmoil. So with this new direction that was taken by a party which believed in that ideology, put it in motion when they came to government, I think there are two ways of looking at it. Number one, we have become a society which questions everything. Yes, of course, we must question, we must do the checks and balances, we must criticize the governments of the day, but sometimes we must also realize that when we criticize, when we raise questions, we are possibly doing that on the basis of not 100% information. Clearly, security agencies and governments will have more information than we ever have had or do have. In such a situation, should we give an elected government to take the call of the day, or should we attribute motives to it from day one? Well, there is a middle path in all of this. I think we should not allow them to go unchecked forever, but at the same time, from day one, if we start questioning, then there is no point of democracy, there is no point of the election system, because a party has come to power, it has formed the government, it has decided to take a decision. Sometimes we have to allow them to take those decisions, because whether those decisions are right or wrong, time will tell. And time in democracy is defined as 5 years. So in the 5 years that government has been in power, if you think that what they've done is not right, the time for the verdict is during elections. In between, if people think democracy only means criticizing, abusing governments in power, then I don't think we have that much faith in democracy. So yes, cutting of internet should be done only in the extreme cases. In Kashmir, yes, there is a reason, because there is terrorism. There is the fact that we have incidents of terrorists coming from across the border from Pakistan into India. If the government and the security agencies in their best mind thought that it was necessary to keep it for a prolonged period of time, I think so be it. Can it continue for 5 years? Certainly not. What is the ideal time period this should have been done? Is 1 year too long, or 1.5 years too long? That's a debate, I think, which is open. There will never be an ideal prescription that can be there. But yes, that is open for debate. And there the debate is absolutely necessary, as well as our right to debate. Cutting off of internet in times of emergency, for example, at the border when there are farmer protests. Well, I think in some cases, if you have information that there is going to be an untoward incident and it can be prevented by cutting off the internet, again, the law and order compulsions should be allowed to prevail. Can it be there for a long period of time? Certainly not. But at the same time, I would like to put it on record that sometimes, again, there are political motivations, but from the word go to question them as political motivations based on which this decision has been taken is also unfair. we have to, in our society, begin to look at the midway, the middle path. The middle path sometimes is very important. We should not be in extremes, questioning the minute internet is cut and not questioning at all, even if it's cut forever. So these are the two extremes. Somewhere in the middle is where we should be. We're becoming sometimes a very shrill country, a very shrill democracy. I think we don't need to be that shrill. We've got, people of India have chosen certain people. In one state, it'll be one party. In another state, it'll be another party. But people of that state have chosen those governments. Those governments should be given time and given the freedom to take a call. And they are the best place to take those calls, whether internet should be cut or not. But this is certainly a situation in an exception where there are security or law and order issues at stake. At any other given point in time, you can't take away a citizen's freedom for speech, expression, and opinion.
Yes. Next question is from Ehsas. Ehsas, please unmute yourself and ask.
I actually want to ask the earlier, before I allow Ehsas to ask his question, I want to know from the others, are they satisfied with the answers so far?
Yes, ma'am, definitely.
Yes, ma'am, I guess.
Also, ma'am, I
don't want to guess. I don't want to guess. I want to know. So maybe people can take time off and write.
They are everyone. It is.
Like, ma'am, basically what we have, like, we are thinking from your mind now. So we get to know, like, there is something and there is a lot of things going on your end as well. So हम आपके mind से देख रहे हैं, तो हमारा spectrum भी बहुत broad है ना.
Very good. Yeah, I saw a few comments coming in that some of them are satisfied. So great. Yes, Ehsas, what's your question?
Ma'am, I had this question, like, we have this heated debate now, कि what is difference between freedom of speech and now वो उस speech से किसी को personally hurt हो रहा है. तो आप इसके बीच में कैसे separation boundary बनाते
हैं? एक simple चीज है. हमने I don't know, but when we were kids, कहा जाता था कि आप if you had little fights with your siblings, we were told कि अपने आप सुलझाइए. अपने आप सुलझाइए का मतलब क्या होता है कि अगर मेरे भाई या मेरे बहन ने मेरा टॉय ले लिया या मेरा कुछ खराब कर दिया, तो वो कह सकता है कि भाई मुझे फ्रीडम है, मैं तो जैसा मन आएगा करूंगा क्योंकि मैं तो आजाद पंछी हूँ. दूसरी साइड मेरा भी कुछ फ्रीडम है. मेरा फ्रीडम है that when I'm playing with a certain thing, then nobody has the right to disturb that because that is my right. The issue here is that wherever somebody's right comes, another person's right begins. There is a common boundary. आप मेरे पास से गुजर जाएं और आप कहें मैं तो अपना हाथ स्ट्रेच कर रहा हूं, आपको लग गया तो मैं क्या करूं? नहीं, that is not allowed. Simply because आपका फ्रीडम हाथ फैलाने का अगर है, तब तक है जब आपके आसपास का एरिया खाली है. लेकिन अगर आप हाथ फैला रहे हैं और उसके पास there is another person standing and it is actually hitting that person, तो आपका freedom restrict करना पड़ेगा. So freedom is a concept which is not absolute. Freedom has to have certain boundaries. हाँ, अगर कोई नहीं है किसी कमरे में तो आप हाथ यहाँ फैलाइए, सामने डालिए, जो मर्जी करिए. आपकी freedom unrestricted है. In this room right now where I'm speaking to you from, I have unrestricted freedom कि मैं जितना मर्जी ऊंचा बोलूं क्योंकि और कोई है नहीं इसमें. लेकिन अगर यहाँ फोन पर कोई और बात कर रहा होगा तो मेरी unrestricted freedom नहीं है, because I have to moderate my voice, because the other person also has a right to speak on the phone at the same time, because it might be an important issue that he or she is dealing with. So even in freedom of expression and freedom of speech, we have to look at it in this way. I've given you a very, very small and simple example. It has to be seen. आपकी freedom जहाँ तक बढ़ना चाहती है वहां बढ़ नहीं सकती, क्योंकि किसी और की फ्रीडम को हर्ट कर रही है। इसलिए आपको पीछे हटना पड़ेगा। अब आप ये नहीं कह सकते कि ये मेरी फ्रीडम ऑफ स्पीच है। नहीं, अगर आपकी फ्रीडम ऑफ स्पीच से मुझे चोट पहुंच रही है तो आपकी फ्रीडम ऑफ स्पीच नहीं है, बिकॉज मेरी फ्रीडम हर्ट हो रही है उसमें। सो दैट बिकम्स द डिसाइडिंग फैक्टर, वेयर डज माई फ्रीडम एंड? My freedom ends at the boundary of where somebody else's freedom begins. That is the simplest way and simplest definition of everybody's freedom and its boundaries. Nobody will have complete freedom over everything they want to do all the time. Sometimes you may, because कोई सुन ही नहीं रहा, आप जो मर्जी गाली दीजिए किसी को, कोई पास में नहीं है तो आपकी फ्रीडम चल रही है. Nobody is there to contest it. But if you're abusing somebody who's in hearing distance, then I'm sorry, you're infringing on somebody else's freedom. And that is the best way to regulate ourselves. Yes, there are courts, yes, there are institutions which will come into play, but most of the time, I feel we as individuals, and you especially as college students, must realize कि हमारी बाउंड्री कहाँ तक है फ्रीडम की. वो फ्रीडम वहां तक ही है जहां हम किसी और की फ्रीडम के ऊपर we are not breaching that boundary. That is the definition of freedom in any form that you want to see. Freedom of thought, freedom of speech. अब thought तो क्या है? I can keep it inside, but if I begin to manifest my thought and convert it into action, and it sort of has an adverse impact on somebody else, then that's not my freedom of thought. That's the way I would look at this entire issue.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, then we have one question. Ma'am, we have one question from Sanchit. What an aspiring journalist must do to enhance his or her skills?
Number one, for an aspiring journalist, you have to have command over the language. Number one, because you are the communicator. Language, whichever language you want to be a journalist in, there are multitude of languages. India is a very rich and diverse country. You must have complete control over your language. You can't be saying something and meaning something else, or meaning something and saying something else. So number one, control and command over your language. Number two, you have to be extremely aware as a journalist. So, reading a lot, knowing a lot, current affairs, reading not just newspapers, but in India, but across the world. You just have to be a very aware person. So even historical hindsight, if you're in the political field like I am, then you must know the history of India. You have to know the parliament, the freedom movement, everything, every political party, what it stands for. So information and knowledge of all of this is very important depending on the area that you pick up. Having done that, when you have these bases, that's when the stage of having a formal training comes in. And then that formal training actually polishes you, makes you perfect, because it trains you in the field of television, print journalism, internet blogging, digital journalism, whatever it is, whatever be the medium in which, there has to be a certain amount of training that goes into it. And these are important ingredients for anybody who wants to come into journalism. And as I said, number one, control over and command over your language, extremely important. Hello? Have you lost the connection?
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, so
Yeah.
the last question for the day. Yes, ma'am. What do you think? How much safe our data is on social media?
Not safe at all. Not safe at all. Don't put anything there that you don't want people to know.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, now due to time constraints, we cannot take up any more questions, but please feel free to reach out to us on our social media handles. Now, I would like to thank ma'am for engaging with us and for enriching with us. And it was a nice time to interact with you and to learn something from you. And I hope that all the participants enjoyed. Now, I would like to also thank the participants for joining us today and for maintaining the decorum. Thank you. Have a great evening.
I'm so grateful for having me, all of you. I hope I answered your questions. And I just wish you guys all the best. Keep engaging into new areas, push your frontiers, gain knowledge from various fields, and do stay in touch. I'm available on my Twitter handle at Navika Kumar, and my mail ID is navika.kumar@timesgroup.com. Do reach out to me if you have any questions or you want to touch base at any point in time. Thank you so very much for having me over, and I hope it was worth your while.
Definitely. Ma'am.
Thank you. Bye.